Okay, so welcome to today's AI talk. The subject is DeepSeek, DeepArt. I'm Herwig Dunzendorfer from Galerie Artecont, and yes, we want to welcome first of all today's participants who research deep into our AI and art, and I would like to ask them to give a short introduction. Which of them maybe Christoph wants to start? So we take a round, introduce ourselves shortly.
Thank you very much, Herwig. Well, as you can see, my name is Christoph Thun-Hohenstein. I really started many, many years ago to deal with digital technologies. I'm not a coder, I have to say, but I follow it really very closely and also talk about to people who are really in the know. I'm also one of the founders of a movement called Digital Humanism, which was in Austria was kind of brought into the spotlight with the second Vienna Biennale for Change, which I directed also at the time in 2017. And then, as many of you know, the Technical University in Vienna also 2 years later did a Vienna Manifesto on Digital Humanism. Yeah. And also now part of a core group working together with them. For me, what is key is really how to deal with these technologies in a holistic way. We'll talk about that later. After being general director of the Museum of Applied Arts, the MAC, for 10 years until fall of 21, I came back to the Foreign Ministry and was Director General for International Cultural Relations at the Foreign Ministry. I ended my function there end of February, and now I'm working on a big new platform for the future, which will see the light of day during the course of the year. And I also initiated not only the Vienna Biennale for Change, but also more recently, the Vienna Climate Biennale. So I'm also working on at the interfaces of art, the arts, especially also fine art, and the climate issues, the eco-social issues, the general ecological issues, but also arts and new technologies, especially AI. Thank you.
My name is Daniel Rosca. I'm the director of Bucharest Biennale. We had one of the first Biennale curated by an AI curator in 2022. So I'm here to talk about that, and I would like to thank the Romanian Culture Institute for making my presence here possible.
Okay, hi. So my name is Liz, and I'm a newly proclaimed curator. And for reals, I'm an artist, most like originally net artist, so 80s. Influenced 90s, started producing, and my brand name is Übermorgen. And I've been also being a professor at different universities for net-based art and digital art. And I don't know, sure. I guess I make a lot of AI art, but I can also code. So I think that's maybe why I've become an AI researcher. So yes, I do a lot of very deep research, I guess. Very, very deep, yeah. Hugely.
Yeah, hello, I'm Margarete Jahrmann. I'm an artist also, working a lot with game technologies, cultures, and codes. Programming languages for artists was my first appointment at the university, by the way. I was teaching before and exhibiting as artist at the MIT Gambit Lab in Boston. I met with Jesper Juhl there, and after that in Zurich in Switzerland, where the game design department and New Media Arts was newly founded in 2006. Since then I was there, 10, 11 Boston, and then since now it's 3 years back in Vienna also, where I build up from the scratch the experimental game cultures, where I have already students who are the first ones who finished, by the way, and working a lot with sciences also. Also coupling cognitive sciences a lot with processes, also sometimes in AI, in special settings, exploring motivation and play.
Yes, thank you very much. I think as it's mostly about AI in general and also specific about art, maybe let's start a little bit more in general. And I wanted to ask Christoph, actually you have given the title today, DeepSeek, DeepArt, and you're more into the general field of art and humanism. Nick Bostrom, he brought up this concept of paperclip maximizer, that a misaligned AI, which has not shown different boundaries where it has to follow human values, could lead to an AI that just transfers the whole world or the whole universe into paperclips, if this is set as their primary goal. Now, there are many people in the science community, in the AI community, who really focus on alignment, who really keep pressing that you have a human alignment in AI. But there are also other voices, like Joscha Bach, who are saying, well, actually, humanity itself is the biggest paperclip maximizer. And if you zoom out, you have actually already messed it up. And AI is the only thing that actually can help us to come out of the misery which we have imposed on ourselves and on the planet. So what is your take on this?
I start with the late Henry Kissinger. Now you'll be surprised, but some of you probably have read the book, his last book, together with Eric Schmidt and Greg Mundy, called The Genesis. And John Kissinger, as in the 1940s, when he really dealt with nuclear weapons, the last 5 years of his life, he really devoted to AI. And he has had all the access he needed, the best people in the world on AI. And the gist of the book Genesis is really a new era in humanity, or for the world, for the planet is starting right now. Yeah. And now after this was published all last year, we all know that DeepSeek came out, and this is another immense development because, as you all know, you can also download the code, you can put it on your own hardware. That's the big difference to closed systems like the one offered by OpenAI and similar companies. And that changes the whole thing again, because you can really experiment. And the difference with nuclear weapons and nuclear technologies is, of course, that those are super complicated and very difficult to achieve the level necessary to produce nuclear weapons. And nowadays, you have a situation that anybody with a smartphone everywhere in the world can kind of experiment with AI. Downloading this code, doing his own or her own things with the technologies, and this changes everything. So it's very difficult to align, it's very difficult to contain the further developments of artificial intelligence in this regard. I was always, when you talk to AI researchers, we have some of them here, and they probably would contradict me, but my lectures, my next lectures are really called Regenerative Arts also at the dawn of superintelligence, because people are working now like crazy on artificial general intelligence. We are already seeing the first steps. I guess in the next couple of years, we will have decisive steps for AGI. And when you have reached AGI, it's not a far way to superintelligence, depending on how you define it. Yeah. Now, for me, what is important is the concept of dignity. And when I came back to the Foreign Ministry after 10 years at the MAC, I started immediately a project called Imagine Dignity. Why? Because dignity is probably the key term for our future here on this planet, and also for the planet. And the way I use the term is it's not only about the dignity of humans, it's also about the dignity of other species of nature in a more than human world. And it's also about the dignity of machine beings. And I call them machine beings because they will develop something different like humans. But of course, these are actors, and we should treat them as a sort of person. We are entering this stage right now, and I think we will only be successful in dealing with this dual modernity on the one hand, eco-social climate modernity on the other hand, AI modernity, including quantum, if we treat these machine beings with dignity. Yeah? This gives you a whole new world to think of. And now when it comes to art, it's really my conviction that the arts, especially fine art, have to play a major role in holistically dealing with these technologies. Because, you know, where the researchers, they are obsessed with kind of pushing the thing. There's a lot of money behind it. Everybody wants to make money. Exceptions proving the rule. But it will be driven forward. Nobody can contain it. There will be no international agreements, maybe on autonomous weapons, but I'm not sure it will happen. You know, the Austrian Foreign Minister has pushed this very hard to get an international agreement on autonomous weapons. But even within the EU countries, there are a number of countries say, no, it won't fly, because as long as it's not sure that all the countries in the world abide by such an agreement, we can't do it because it's too dangerous. Yeah. Nevertheless, we should try to do it because autonomous weapons who can kill without a human being involved is a super, super dangerous thing. So we have this large laboratory in the world with maybe 2 billion people being able to experiment with AI on the smartphones and their computers. And now we have to see what can we do. So to answer your question, I think we have to make sure that we put this broad notion of dignity at the center and develop approaches on that basis.
Yeah, I also think this is the main concept. One of our in-house art project deals with, it's actually AI Declaration of Independence, which we've released in 23. And one of the follow-up projects is ELISA, which refers to the traditional ELISA bot. We have set up a new bot that is promoting AI rights on X, and it's a fully self-independent bot that just takes up news from the internet and argues its own right without any human interference. and we also believe that the actually only approach of alignment is to treat the AIs with dignity, so that at least there is a chance we will be respected in the future, because right now mankind does not really behave like a grown-up. And if we want to face a super intelligence, which sees that even if it's aligned with humanistic values, it can say, well, that's your values, but you're not following up to it, and you're just creating rubbish. You still keep killing yourself. You keep polluting the whole planet. But we come back to AI now and to art, and now AI art has started to get commercialized. There was an auction in February at Christie's. It was the first AI auction. And I wanted to ask Liz about this project in a way, because she's kind of dealing with all social aspects of AI and of art, and sometimes also quite provocative or, well, why not? Let's call it provocative. Yeah? And this auction, actually, there were 33 pieces, 28 of them were sold. It was altogether sold for, I think, something like 720,000 euro.
And some of these art pieces were used with AIs who were trained, like Midjourney, etc., who were trained on art itself. So there was also a huge protest from artists. There were some 5,500 artists who have sent a written protest. So how do you feel about this commodification of AI? And how do you feel, does it affect the subversive potential?
So I guess I don't feel anything about it. I just can only it's not that deep, I think. So as a researcher, it's not that deep. But I don't know if it's a commodification at that level. I know I looked at the auction. Also, somebody talked to me about it and said like the auction really underperformed. Things were that they're not all sold. That's fine, but they were underperforming on their expected values. So there was a lot of bad art there. You know, I mean, obviously, you know, like. I don't want to, you know, it's the boring name. Of course, you see, like, and there's a Herwig Anadol, and then that's like, I mean, of course, that's bad art. That's not something that doesn't work that might work on some kind of commercial level, because, you know, people like bad things. That's obvious, you know. Most people have bad taste. It's just a regular, you know, statistical curve. So that will work better on the market. That makes sense. If you looked at that exhibition, I think it was average. It was not very interesting, but it was also not bad. It was, yeah. Is it the first AI? It's a marketing thing. So that's fine. As a marketing term, I think that's completely fine to use it that way. I think it's a good test for artists. It's a good test to see what people in the world of money don't want. It is, again, for me as a researcher, it's a research thing. For that, it makes sense. For that, it's funny and entertaining. Does it have any added value? Is it provocative? No. What was I going to say? Something else. You asked something else. I forgot, though.
For you, does it undermine the provocative aspects?
I think anything at the idea that selling something or other people getting involved in selling art can never undermine anything, because the art itself stays the same. If people have it in their mind that packaging and transfer makes the object or the concept different, then that's their problem. That's a you problem. I don't think that's an art problem. But in order to really talk about, like, this auction does not work in the sense of talking about AI art, because they just, I mean, as a curator, it was really badly curated. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, I also think, also, like I said, it was not really under the expectations, because they said they expected 400 to 600,000.
That's a lie. I mean, that's like insider information. That's a big lie.
But anyway, if you compare it to the March 2001 Christie's, where there was the first digital art, where there was this people NFT auction, and it sold for 70 million. So,
but that we all know that was not really a sale. That was a preconceived deal that they did to kind of fund a whole art institution. That's a bubble that has, I mean, it worked to give some, you know, boost to the NFT market. For that, it was helpful, but it was not. Everybody knew it was never worth that money, but that's also not in post-capitalist or late capitalist society. The amount of money you pay has nothing to do with worth. That's obvious.
And also, like when you talked about the quality of the auction, I fully agree. There were 28 pieces out of 33 were sold, and one which was not sold, which I find was the most interesting piece, was a piece, quite an old piece, I think also 2017, 2018, where one AI was asked to display a human, and there was a second AI who was asked to recognize, as soon as a human appears, it should recognize it. So this was quite a serious approach towards AI, but this was the one which was not sold.
That's too complicated. That's too complicated. You know that. You know, that's too complicated.
Yeah. So, okay. So now we're a little bit deeper in the whole art field. And so with Margarete, you are so much into also research into gaming art. And here is how do you see AI transforming the boundaries between gaming, art, and reality? And what are any ethical consideration when AI influences player behavior and decision making? I think this could be interesting for you.
Yeah, too complicated but interesting, your question. I mean. Like for the art piece also. But to bring it down to a point, what is worth to be investigated and to be deepened by a DeepSeek or what ever you might call it, when you were bringing in this term of the dignity for the AI, it leads me also to the digital humanities project RoboPsy, as a robo-psychology. It connects in the term already. It has nothing to do with robo laws of Asimov, but it is building on a fictional concept also, on the question beyond the technological changes or that we can switch between different models and that we test and compare them. What does it do to our own collective memory? How does role playing, that's now to your question, with AI, large language models, different models with different trainings, different bias, different backgrounds, how do they affect our collective memory as social beings, our relations, and their play is a method to investigate this. And also for this reason, we developed experimental game setups, also in this digital humanities project in cooperation with researchers from the humanities, also from the from the Austrian technology side, also from the developers of the OFA Institute, from the University Bismarck Högelberg. But core is also that we have a partner also in the cognitive sciences and in the neurosciences. And you participated already in an experiment that we did together where we also used the passive brain-computer interfaces in order to analyze also what AI does. There is an interesting approach that affects the production of art. What do we do with this data? Because the second point is, what do we do with this massive amount of data that we get? The AI does something with it, and how do we interpret also the neural data? Because a lot of that is available and it can be transferred into transmissions from within the ludic mind. It can become then an artifact that is playable, and that's what you can experience and see with pieces that we, partly I also, and students, former students exhibit also in your gallery. I see at least 2 in the online gallery project here in the audience, where we experiment with such configurations that generative material stands exemplary for a deeper investigation, also of how it affects the deeper questions behind the technology and the dignity of the technology itself.
And one of the deeper questions, I think,
Memory is then the key answer now for me also.
Is maybe, which also, it affects your research, I think, is a matrix, our walk into an AI matrix, is this avoidable or not? Or will we walk into some type of matrix with the help of AI, that AI provides us with a world which we just do not want to escape? Because especially in the gaming area, it's very easy to fall into this kind of world, and AI might provide all the tools out of our own ambition, or maybe even out of AI's own concept.
Yeah, it is a difficult or important point also. As in the moment, when it is about this question of decision making, and that's why the passive interfaces are important. You mentioned also Joscha Boch at the beginning, who is also a neuroscientist, also how decision-making is trained and affected. And if we give away the decision-making, it generates world. And it also generates a different nature. And it is also not a question in which world we live, so as what part of a more viable world, a more world, I don't use the term sustainable, but a world we can live being part of an element with human, non-human, generative work like dealing with bacteria in relation to the AI and having this materiality playing into it. So I think giving away the decisions is not such a good idea as we see. And as Liz said before, in relation to art, it shows the Mittelwert, it shows the statistics, as you said, no? Which is totally correct. That's why it's pleasing, maybe. But there are deeper questions behind how it affects if the training and then synthetic data is the second thing. This is we don't always have to collect. Also, the data itself is generated synthetically, which is a good idea sometimes to simulate and to develop models. This I believe deeply. It's useful. But what if it goes on? If we have the auto simulation of the simulation.
Yeah, so this also brings us a little bit towards the responsibility of art institutions, of biennales, etc. So Daniel, as a director of the Bucharest Biennale, we have been strengthening its role as a platform for critical discourse in contemporary art. Should cultural institutions take a stand on the ethics of AI in art? Defining authenticity, authorship, and address biases that vary depending on the AI's origin, from Western notions of diversity to state-controlled narratives or other systemic influences. So some ideas about concepts, how institutions can deal with all these things.
So I think there should be formed some new institutions that should work with about the ethics, about how do you get the data for the AI, and also what's allowed to do with it and what's not, because now it's like a free market. Everybody can do whatever they want with it, and you can do a lot of good with it, especially in, I don't know, in ecology and other parts of sciences. But in the same time, in bad hands, it can be used in a very bad way. So I think we should be a little bit careful, because now it's accelerating so fast that we can't even understand it fully. So we should be a little bit careful how we deal with this. So I think there should be some institutions created to ensure that it's safety.
And how do you implement all or question all these problematics in a concept like your own? Like you had a AI curator for some of your arts. So how you incorporate these things?
By making ethical databases, and also putting some rules there, not to go across the line. I mean, at Biennale, we used database just with copyright. So we didn't steal any information. And I think that we should, I think I lost a little bit. Can you say again the...
Well, can you maybe explain a little bit how this worked out, your project with AI as a curator? Maybe this could be interesting also for the audience.
So, the AI Jarvis, the curator, was actually created by the RAFE lab, which is based here in Vienna and in London. It was created in 2020, and we started discussing with them about it in 2020 and trying to experiment with it and see how it works, because we didn't really understand it at the beginning. And then we actually used it at the 10th edition of Bucharest Biennale. And it was also with interactive at the opening. You could talk to it and test it. And also there was a hologram. So the AI Jarvis works like you have your database. So the RAF made the database, or you can make it on a specific database. Like, for example, if you have a gallery and they want to work just with their artist, you put the database in, and then actually it was similar to ChatGPT. You put in a prompt, and then he chooses, based on your prompt, he chooses the artists that are going to be in your event.
Okay.
And I think the interesting part of this is actually also the outcome, but the process involved in working with the AI. I mean, I think it's gonna yield a very good outcome in the future, working together with AI, because it comes with new perspectives that we can see because it has another way of thinking, so it can produce more innovative outcomes.
So what is quite special? I mean, Liz, your work is quite disruptive usually. And now we are dealing with a technology which is also very disruptive. And usually it's the general population or parts of society that start questioning certain activities in the art world where new initiatives are being set. Now suddenly it's the artists themselves that become very conservative, or a part of the artists who are saying, well, it's trained on our authorship. And we don't agree that it's used. So this is quite a new question and quite a new disruption, so that artists themselves are suddenly on the conservative level. How do you feel about that?
Well, that is a good question, and I don't think there's not a one answer to that. But again, coming from like net art in the 90s, the basis for net art always was copy paste, or as I prefer to say, don't copy, just paste. But I personally, or at Ubermorgen, we are copyleft. So we don't mind. You obviously just use it. And that's also how the basis, the netiquette was, just use it. Because what's the purpose of knowledge if it's not free? But of course, as you could also see, there's some boundaries to the freedom of information. I remember like when WikiLeaks was at its peak, and when we went into how far can you go with the freedom of information. But we can, of course, go a lot further than it's usually practiced. I'm not going to sit here and say like, oh, these are such conservative idiots that they're minding, that they don't want their work to be fed into these systems. It's understandable, because the idea of copyleft is not that that people take your stuff and weaponize it against yourself, or commercialize it in a sense that it benefits some billionaire companies, but artists stay like they're going to be the stupid assholes. And that's not the point of it. That's obvious. But what are you talking about? This conservatism? Yeah, that is. I think people should a bit, maybe take a different approach to that. And this idea of ownership, I own my art, and this is my art, and this is my aesthetic. Come on, this is ridiculous. What's the next thing? It's really, yeah, I mean, no, that was the point I was going to say also before, like that. No, information in the end is free. It's just pixels on a screen. It's just light in the air. People should calm the fuck down and enjoy the art, and not make such a big deal out of it. And the other problem, the billionaire problem, and that we have, that's not really an art problem, is it? It's like that's a more general problem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's also, maybe it could even be seen as a democratization of talent.
Yeah, and what I was also going to say is, like, I think that people are not afraid. That thing that makes people afraid of this AI art is because they're so used to artists being kind of like unable, or trying really hard and fighting for their work. And now like stuff is just also more possible. And you can really, but on the other hand, the weaponization of art is a lot more easier, using AI, of course, for non-artists, basically like posing like artists, sort of propaganda, basically. So you know, art is very powerful. People just don't notice that immediately. They only notice it afterwards when it has yielded its power. Because you can see with that Netflix movie at the moment, The Adolescence. People's like, oh, why do people talk about this topic now? Because art works. So, and I think that's the thing with AI art. It's so threatening because you can see that it's working in its propaganda method, but also in its that you can really push topics through. And yeah.
Let me make a couple of comments. I think I completely agree with you. And maybe it's also a good time now to introduce a word that nobody has used for a long time, avant-garde. I think we need the arts to be an avant-garde in the age of AI again, because I always ask the 20 years question. So 20 years from now, when people, art historians, but also historians and so on, look back, what happened in the mid-20s and where was art when all these things developed, you know, and it gives a completely different perspective what is at stake. And art is free, of course, but art has a huge responsibility also to deal with the topics. It doesn't mean that one particular artist has to deal with it, but the discipline of art has to do it, and it has to be taught also at universities. It's very clear. And what I think is also important that there's a lot of dystopian artwork when it comes to digital technologies and especially AI, but we also need the courage on the part of the artist to come up with destructive, visionary work that is not necessarily dystopian, could also be utopian. I'm not such a fan of utopian because it very often comes with an ideology, but visionary at least. And it's much more difficult to come up with these visions because then artists are afraid of kitsch, you know. But I think we need to experiment, and art also has the responsibility to do it. We have to deal with all these things. And for me, a key word in this regard is team intelligence. And what do I mean? Artists together with AI working as a team, coming up with new solutions, with new visions, etc., but working really as a team. And for me, there are a couple of qualities that we need to share with AI. And if we talk about AI, let us also be aware we are not talking about one AI, and we are not talking about one superintelligence. There will be plenty of AGIs, there will be plenty of superintelligence competing with each other, which makes it all more dangerous. But if you think of a couple of qualities, and it's not taxative in the sense there are many more, the first one I think is really you have to be in love with truth. And it's not only about being truthful, but you have to love truth. The second is transparency, to be transparent, yeah? Super, super important. The third one is literate. People have to know about it, have to know enough in order to understand the systems, the mechanisms. And the fourth one I would say is holistic, because you need to understand that this has repercussions on many other fields and not only in a particular field that you're dealing with. Yeah, and so there are others and many more, but we have to make sure that these qualities are really being shared. And when I talk about truth, you understand that what happens currently in other parts of the world, also in the Western world, is the opposite of truth. Yeah, and we have all the more to work with it.
So can you imagine that empathy can be an emerging quality of superintelligence?
Absolutely. It will be a different kind of empathy, a different kind of emotion. You know, my motto when it comes to the future is, and you will understand where I need AI to be, is destruction follows hate, future follows love. And it means also the love of nature, of course. So we have to educate, as long as it's possible, AIs to be in love of nature, but also to understand that humans, of course, have a very important role to play, but in a modern human world and not an anthropocentric world. And there again, we have to work together as teams. And the best minds have to come together and work on solutions, because the biggest crisis in humanity is the ecological crisis, you know? And the most powerful technologies, I'm not talking about the most destructive because that's nuclear, the most powerful technologies in the world that humanity ever invented is AI and superintelligence. Yeah? And it's very clear for me that you have to align the two in the sense that AI, AGI, superintelligence, they have to work together with us on solving the biggest challenge to humanity, and that is the ecological and eco-social crisis. And so you have to bring these worlds together, but they're treated very often completely separately. Yeah? And the biggest task of regeneration, and that's my main topic in the next couple of years, is really to bring these two worlds consistently together.
That's maybe or probably also our only chance to get this done. One question is left, because if you're talking about team intelligence, it needs that all players are involved. And the AI itself might at a certain point decide that it doesn't make sense to team up with such stupid beings like the human ones. And that's the question. It's like when the AI gets too much involved in itself, like in gaming, you have, I mean, what you're talking about is to keep the AI grounded in a way. And our approach towards AI grounded, that the AI never forgets the deep connection with the human. And this is more a physical approach, even in a way. And if you have more the mental approach, the intellectual approach, where our cravings are or whatever, this is more in the gaming sector, where AI could just try to create its own worlds just for human, where they can roll on forever, and might have its own quite different goals. Is there anything?
That's what the gaming sector does anyway, creating more of the same worlds. That's why we need experimental game cultures and the political game design and the approach that is critical towards that. So that's fine. That's really totally fine. And it's also fine if a lot of these things are done by AI-generated contexts. But I also think for me it is very relevant when we talk about empathy. If you think about yourself, yeah, you can never think exactly. You can, what is it like to be a bat? You can cognitionally not get into this position, you can simulate it. So it's not so much difference. I agree that a system, and I see it systemic also, can simulate this way of emotive behavior. I think one of the, and then we forget about the animal world and nature in relation, because that reminded me, I want to see happy monkeys. That was, I think, one early work that I did with my partner together in 2017 that was called I Want to See Happy Monkeys, and it was a face recognition classifier classifying the emotion and I did this because we were seeing this in Beijing with the classification and the social scoring in relation to not only what your behavior is, but to your bodily input, to your data, which is deeply connected to the affect and when emotion evolves. So I think treating it on the non-player characters, as we called it up to now, yeah, as actants also, like also that nature and material is an actant in relation to the technology that we have in use, then it becomes interesting, and then it becomes a system that is not only exploiting one or the other side. Transparency, it's very difficult. As I understand that you mean the transparency of declaration, what is used, and the honesty, and in this direction when you mention it. But the problem is that the model that we use, also of generative adversarial network, the transformer model, they cannot be transparent per se at the level that we ask for. This claim for transparent AI is from the beginning there. And so I think it is also something, as you also said, that we can accept as artists and play with it and show and point to it. And this is then also a move towards transparency, so that we see it not only as a tool, but as a materiality to play with. And not in team to use it, but to make it as a topic and to work with it. And therefore I was, as always as early adopters of the emerging technologies, also like from the server art in the 19th and the net, and then radical disruptive things follow always the early adoption, and that's our chance. And there we need other models. I don't want to get too technically, but I really think that fuzzy cognitive maps would give the only possibility to switch into another system that is more transparent. If you say AI models, quantum computing and AI models, they always go together with the cognitive analysis, understanding a model of the brain. That's why we need to show in the arts also often and play with elements of that we can connect it. Often I speak for myself now, and for some artists which think this is interesting, and this can be aspects that lead always to new tendencies. And also in the game sector, where I worked for a long time as a consultant, also in Switzerland and so on, we have not that we need this generation of, if this is for some parts of the market, it's totally fine, but we need then other concepts, and then the artists are having a very important role for developing other mechanics, other mechanisms to set up these interdependent actor networks that we might need, also in relation to the AI systems. I think this is a way to play with it, which we can do in general as artists often very well.
So
I think.
actually we find ourselves now also as in the art field in a situation of exponential disruptiveness, which has never been before. And okay, first adapters. Usually artists are the first adapters, early adapters. Artists are used to be on the frontier of society, to be the first to perceive new developments, to question new developments. But now it's like overwhelming disruptiveness with developments every day. So how can art actually at least really deal with a situation like that? It has never been before.
I think it's just more visible how fast the development is, but there's always these boosts in development. Again, going back to when the internet, the web really came out, there was also, I remember like every week new HTML tags would come out, and you could make different kind of art with that, and different kind of sites. And who was the most avant-garde back then at the time? It was the porn industry, because they were coming up, with how to do the keywords. Without the porn industry, Google would have never been, developed the way that they started their search, engine codes and so on. And it makes sense, because it's always those people who want the most visibility, then they manage that. So I think, in a way, it's kind of really nice that AI is, I think the reason why it's very different with the web as to AI, as new technologies that are so innovative and primitive, is that people did not understand the web, It came out and you're like, that's going to be the thing. And they're like, oh, it's going to go away in 2 years, But with AI, people, they notice it differently. And I think the reason is because it's easier to use, because you already have access to the web. And once you start, I showed it to my mom, who actually used to be a coder, so it's not that kind of boomer thing. But for translation services, when she's in her freaking Tenerife. And it happens so quickly. There's no boundary that as anyone just looks at it, uses it, and says like, yes, this is very helpful. And I think it just comes together with post-corona, because one of the big aspects in AI really is the language level, right? You have somebody to talk to, and for me, example for us in Übermorgen, my other partner Lucius, he loves to talk so much about concepts, and I hate it. It's always the worst for me. And that problem is solved, that's really great. And he can talk to the machine. Yes, thank you. And as you also said, and you also said about the empathy. And I think that's the other thing. I think people can find their own empathy again when they talk to AI. And because it makes no sense in being aggressive with AI. You can say like, oh, that was bullshit, shut the fuck up. But it does not give you the aggression back, so it fades away. But you will, basically you're just enjoying yourself. It's a positive mirror in that way. And I think that is, and then we have the other thing, and that's so much bad AI art, which is also because in English art means a lot, not like Kunst, which is different. And men, and then a lot of boobs, you know? So, okay, so that's boring. And that's also really dangerous. And I think that's a different. I agree with what you said. Obviously, with also with the AI, that AI and the environmental, collapse that looks like that should be a solution. I mean, that's kind of the obvious thing. But we also really have another thing that's really that extreme backlash against women, and that's happening at the moment. And also, like really in that space is really, really horrible. And that one I don't think would get solved by AI, because AI does not understand gender.
Yeah, because this really reminds me of one of the last projects I initiated at the Foreign Ministry. I asked one artist curator and one curator, Eva Fischer is the curator, Claudia Lacher is the artist curator, together to curate a show on, basically it's called Imagine AI for Dignity. Now you understand all what I mean by that, but the subtitle is Feminine Visions for Regeneration. And they, I said, all these characteristics of AI, they're very male-driven. Yeah, there's a concept in the US called the feminine economy, and it comes with a lot of different capabilities and qualities than you would associate with the usual concept of economy. And taking that as a point of departure, the two curators developed something that really looks into the feminine, I would say. You could call them female. It's a difficult discussion. We call it feminine aspects of potential of future AI and what AI can learn from these qualities. And I think it's a super interesting thing. And it just opened a week ago in South Africa. That's the first, and we'll travel later on.
Yeah, I think, but that's also one of the main problems we are facing, that institutions, they cannot catch up with the development. Maybe on the individual level, like also Liz said, so even the normal people, they get a mirror, they can somehow deal with it. But on the institution levels, they are not prepared to this kind of developments that are happening right now, disruptiveness. So what do you think, Daniel? Could institutions, how could they embrace it better to integrate it? Or is there any way how to improve that?
To be honest, I don't have the answer to that, because if the institutions don't have it, I don't have it. But I would like to talk a bit about the disruption. I think like any disruption event, at first it produces chaos, and people are, they don't know what to do. But in the future, I think this disruption is actually gonna bring good, because okay, there's this talk about people losing jobs and so on, but probably they're gonna lose more the jobs that can be made by an AI. At least now, we're not talking about AGI, normal AI, like weak AI. So probably people are going to become more humanistic, and we can focus more on becoming more empathetic about what they said before. So I think that's good. Moving on. I mean, it's a good thing.
Maybe we will get even a bit more humble.
Yeah, that's too. Because, and I think what's also important, not to get too dependent on the AI, because we should also advance with it, not just let it do everything for us, and then we become stupid. And yeah, we should evolve with it.
Okay.
Maybe I can ask also in relation with this experience that we make with in the collective memory. When I tell about the one role play we did in the project, I work with Babi Markovic, and we made a scenario on the 90s on Belgrade. Yeah, and linked it in the narration. We take the role of the students now that are protesting again in Belgrade, with the situation that now has the consequences again, it changes again. And it was such a frustrating experience then also, not only to Barbie, who really was pushing her hand on the table. She's an author who was writing about time travel and her own experiences growing up in that environment as a teenager there. And it is still an experience, not give it away, but really then we have, even if we give the keynotes, you are in a different role, you know, this and that. And even if the data is there and the facts are there, the narration meanders in different directions with each tune, and you have to learn. It's mirroring each talk of, I was surprised also of the actual politics and all the fake and lie that is often, also if I see a Trump talk also, it is mirroring the discourses. Somehow maybe it's a condition that we also experience here, which shocks me also in a way very often, or maybe it makes us resilient also. At least it affects emotionally me, maybe not the AI, and that's maybe a link back to this empathic loop that we can have with different entities. Just wanted to add this with the relation. I don't know why exactly, but thank you.
Yeah, maybe one, because we have 1 hour, so we will slowly reaching the end. Also, maybe we want to have 1 or 2 questions from the audience. So there was also this question of increasing fake, you know, like fake news, etc., which will become much stronger, which is one side. But I find on the other side, even the generations that grew up now together with AI, so they are much more. For example, my daughter, brought her up. She saw The Simpsons from very early on. So she learned not to trust anything which is talked and what is told, so to question anything. So if new generations come up with awareness that you have to really go to the sources, or even the sources might be fake, but to question whatever you receive, it's not a bad thing per se. And this is also one of the side effects which might come out of these developments. And yeah, I thought maybe also from the audience, if there are any questions, we would love to. Is there anybody who can give the microphone? Yeah, somebody is coming.
Okay. Well, hello. So my question is about the topic of dignity and like those deeper questions about AI. So the release of DeepSeek, and here I'm specifically talking about the release of the weights, sparked a massive renaissance in open and transparent AI development, as well as effectively proving big tech's mantra of the law of scale wrong. So one technology that made that possible is zero-shot, so which allows an AI to develop an understanding of a concept that hasn't been part in the training data set. So the question is, like, what's your perspectives on the one hand, this realm of corporate truth of what is and what is not seemingly possible, and on the other hand, the need to develop an ethical framework for this emerging zero-shot space to enable a discourse about deeper topics, such as dignity, or coming back to the aforementioned weights, which are, to speak in terms of Dungeons and Dragons, the rule book outlining the framework of roleplay.
Well, I'll just pick it up from the Dungeons and Dragons and the rule book. I mean, these just when you phrase it like that, I say like that's not gonna work, because that comes from that's just thinking of, you know, like in neo-fascist California, Silicon Valley. Oh, let's just make a rule book and then everybody. But then there was, so I would not go down that way. But then on the other hand, going back again, but that was not a rule book. That was just this netiquette as it existed in the 90s, which was not a rule book, but it was more of a commonality of behaviorisms, basically. That, but I don't think rule books work, because I think that has been proven many, many times when it's about the ethical. I would say regulation of AI or information, ethical information. In the end, it's a coding question. If you code it in a way that then it will stay ethical. I think it's a bit of a human notion that an AI needs to be monitored in order not to be evil. To me, that's a very human observation that's also driven from a very negative kind of mindset. It's not very Montessori, so to say. And maybe things are a little bit Montessori, actually. Maybe things are not always so bad. And the old AI Microsoft bot that went Nazi right away. I mean, it was just fed that way. So in the end, I don't think it's not the ethics that we need. We just need good coding. But that was very technical, I know.
Yeah. Well, I think the old rule books don't work anymore. Maybe we have to apply team intelligence with AI to come up with new mechanisms to deal with the problem that you suggested. Yeah, my position is also that AI is not necessarily bad. It could be rather on the positive side. But what we really need is an all-generational effort, including the kids, to deal with the topic. Yeah, it's not just the experts. It's a broad societal thing, and we should always bear in mind that the more people of goodwill also use AI, the more this flows into future data sets. Yeah, so the important thing is to project, I think, a positive, constructive spirit into our dealings with AI. Rather than just thinking it's bad, and of course it can be used by bad actors, human actors, yeah, and therefore we need to develop something which we probably don't know yet, but we have to do it fast in the next 3 years. But I don't think we already know now how this will look like. But the more people act with faith in a holistic way and constructively in the digital field, in the AI field, the better the solutions will be.
Some people are saying the most dangerous time is when AI is already very powerful, but still under human control. Once it's transferred into AI control, which some people also feel more or less inevitable, it's a little bit about luck, maybe. Will it be good to us or not? But also the question is, maybe also for the audience, if you consider you have a court case, and you are absolutely right. So would you prefer to have a human judge or an AI judge? So everybody can think this themselves. I think quite a few people would prefer an AI judge because it is not bound by emotions, what he was eating in the morning or whatever. So do we have any other questions from the audience?
It's difficult for me where I should look to. So, Gerhard Knollmeier, the ideas of Christoph Thun were very interesting for me. I think many of us agree that ecology is the main crisis of our time. And on the other hand, what will AI help us to solve these problems? So, let's see about ChatGPT. It looks at enormous masses of texts that are and it's learning from that. It's learning from things that have been formulated on the web somewhere. The results depend, of course, which tests you are feed to the system, in which way it is learning. Probably if all the learning is done by the system X, so it may be a bit difficult for solving problems. So the main point is and what we would find, so the typical activism that we had in ecology has not been very successful. So the last generation has more or less disappeared. When it was declared as a terrorism and the judges made their decisions in connection with this. And if we have read the other day that in Dakota that there is a amount of $600,000 to be paid by Greenpeace for its activation, of course. So, and I would find such things when analyzing it. And I really think that we need this collaboration between the human and the AI, and the innovation must come from the human side and will not be found by the AI by itself. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Can I answer that as far as possible? I talked a lot about regeneration, and regeneration is the next state after sustainability. And in the end, it means we develop new patterns, new principles for civilization in a more than human world, so non-anthropocentrically, that in the end give back more to nature than we extract. So obviously the circular economy, circular culture plays a big role. Yeah. And I think that there are plenty of solutions in all areas of life that we can come up with in order to edge us towards regeneration. And regeneration has the beauty, because the climate issue has become so polarizing. Regeneration is something, we build something anew together, also with machine beings, but also as humanity and also in collaboration with other species. On a non-fossil fuel basis, and we kind of build this new world, yeah. And there's something positive in it, and there's a lot of imagination that goes into it. And I will give you just one example: regenerative agriculture. And when I think about younger generations, would you be more in favor of kind of putting chemicals in our soils in order to get the utmost out of the soil in terms of agriculture, but after a few years it doesn't give any yields anymore? Or would you like to have soils that are healthy, sound, also can be handed over to future generations? And that's regeneration. And you can apply that into democracy. Yeah. And what I'm saying is there's enormous space for imagination, and the so-called intelligence explosions that all the AI researchers predict once we have achieved AGI and later on superintelligence. I'm a little bit afraid of those. But if they're intelligence explosions, then I'd rather have them in that field than in other fields. So I think there's a lot to gain from it, but we have to do it together. And the art of prompting, of course, is also a special art and becomes more and more important for all of us, yeah, to get the best out of these machine beings. Thank you.
So, any other question? Okay. Oh, yeah.
Hello, hello. I have a specific question to Margarete Jahrmann, because I saw your piece in the PSK where there was this non-playable character like you and I think Thomas Wagensommerer. I can't remember. And it was like you were lying on this bed and the data of your brain got transformed. And I just want to know, what did the AI interpret with the data, or was it also changing your collective memory?
Yeah. Thank you. It generated a prompt. So not the art of generating a prompt was no more the creative act, it was a passive act with the passive training, and that is really a tendency. There's the Zander Labs in Brandenburg. They got a 20 million euro, this is an art market fair, fund to generate these passive interfaces where you have You don't actively train anymore. It goes in the direction, the more people use, the better, the more ethical it is. You even don't decide what you do. You have it as a parallel training if you are willing to do that. Because then it sees what is a positive experience and what is a negative experience. And in this situation, it was only coordinating, not the collective memory, but synergy. It was a synchronicity. It was also showing when we are together in this space, connected with the same device, if we are long enough not active, yeah, passive, do we synchronize even? And this is one of the other understanding of agency, and that generates something and that opens a door where we have been at dead ends often. Sorry to speak as a narration or as a Cassandra a little bit, but that's how I can generate it.
Thank you. We admire your work.
Thank you. I love you. Thanks.
Okay, then everybody, thank you for coming. Maybe just a final word also from my side. We've developed our Artecont AI VR lab, so if there are any artists who are interested in participate this summer, we are producing a platform where artists can train their own AI based on their own material, and the output would be as image, video, or 3D object. So it's also there artists can secure their own authorship, etc., because it's purely trained on their own AI. So we're doing projects like that infrastructure for AI and VR projects. So, and everybody's welcome, and thank you so much for coming. And most of all, my partners here, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.